Hi, welcome back. I think we can all agree that we learn English differently as adults compared with how we were back in high school or middle school. But what does that tell us? How is knowing this or recognizing this important for us adult learners when we're trying to improve our English skills or trying to pick it up again after not learning it for years? Personally, there are two things that we absolutely need to know and think about before getting into English learning as adults. And I believe knowing these two things will be very beneficial for you to carry out your English learning effectively and efficiently. First, we always need to know what our goals are. As adults, we have responsibilities, and more often than not, we have very limited time. And we always have a particular threshold or particular goals that we want to achieve once we decide that we want to do that. Maybe we're going to attend a conference in an English-speaking country, we're going to attend a workshop, a seminar, or maybe we are being transferred to a company in a different country, or maybe we just want to take a break from work and study temporarily overseas. So whatever your reason might be, it's very important for us to know exactly what we're using the language for. Obviously, you can't just say, I want to improve my English and then jump right into it without ever thinking about which aspect you're trying to improve the most. What part of the language skills you need the most? What is your priority? These are the questions you really need to ask yourself and find the answers for before you get started with your English learning. Because not knowing where you're going from here, it's really hard for you to devise a very well thought out plan for yourself. And a lot of times that would cause a lot of waste in time and energy and frustration, most importantly. And it's going to be hard for us to achieve that particular threshold that we set for ourselves months ago. So knowing what you're trying to focus on is really important. And try to be as specific as you can. You know, if you're using English for work, what exactly are you using the language for? Are you trying to set up a meeting with your foreign coworkers? Are you trying to do a presentation? Do you have a lot of presentations on a regular basis? Are you going to do a lot of public speaking? Or is your English only going to be for writing emails to your coworkers or your colleagues in a company overseas? So it depends on exactly what you're trying to do with the language. That will determine what your practice is going to be focused on. And also reevaluate your goals as you go on, because circumstances do change. Maybe in the past you were doing a lot of presentations, so learning how to do English presentations, learn all the common phrases and structures was really important for you. But now, maybe your focus has shifted from that to writing mostly emails or drafting contracts, so basically to English writing. So you may need to shift your gear from really hammering down on your speaking skills to really working on your writing skills. You need to know the proper tone to take when you're writing emails like that or when you're drafting something that's really formal. And I understand that it's very easy for us to get sucked into that one mode and find it really hard to get out. Unfortunately, because of the limited time and resources we have to learn how to use them wisely. And this is why we always need to reevaluate our situation and really think about what our purpose really is. Second, when it comes to designing your own practice or study plan for English learning, I would recommend always focus on variety and repetition. We all know at this point that there are so many different things you can do in order to improve one aspect of your skills. So instead of just doing one thing all the time, try to come up with a variety of things through which you can tackle this one skill or one aspect through different angles. And that's usually going to produce much better results for you than if you just simply focused on one task all the time. For example, if you're trying to improve your listening skills, a lot of times we spend too much time listening to things without really thinking about why we're doing it. But let's not forget the pronunciation is also very important. Because without a standard or correct pronunciation, it's hard for us to understand other people. And it's really hard for other people to understand us as well. So maybe for listening, including pronunciation as part of your practice, and really diversify the kind of learning materials you use. We have different kind of listening practices that you can do. For some kind of materials, you can focus on trying to understand the general meaning of the substance. While for other more valuable learning materials, maybe you want to really focus on the wording, the sentence structures, that particular organization of ideas, in this material. So it's really up to you how you want to make the best of the resources you have. But the key point here is try to diversify, try to adopt a few different practices that all target at the same aspect of that skill so that you can cover this aspect as thoroughly as possible. And you're not going to get bored so easily. Another thing is we want to make sure that we do these practices or these exercises on a regular basis. And that's hence the second part of the point, repetition. It's important for us to repeat the exercise that we do so that we can benefit from these practices. And it doesn't really matter if you repeat these exercises every single day or a few days every week, as long as you have a particular plan in place. Again, depending on how much time you have every day, how much time you have every week, everybody's plan will be very different. But you do need to have a plan, otherwise you're just going to do whatever that comes up to your mind, and that's not going to work well because repetition is the key. Without enough repetition, a lot of things just won't go through into your head. And in return, it will take you a really long time to eventually experience that change, experience that progress you have been looking forward to. On that note, I have noticed that a lot of us, especially take myself for example, if I'm sitting down to study something, a lot of times I'm not really actively engaged with the learning process. And that could be a huge problem. We should always try to become and remain an active learner whenever we spend time learning English. And by being an active learner or staying actively engaged with your learning process, I meant that not only do we need to know what we want to get out of the practice, why we decide to sit down here today, what is the intention for our practice for today? What are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to get out of this practice? We also need to know where we're at right now and how far we still need to go. And we need to make adjustments as we go. Maybe the material that I've chosen for today is a little bit too difficult, is a little bit out of reach. So tomorrow when I'm doing the same thing, I will change it into something simpler or vice versa. So to put it simpler, being an active learner means that we always need to know what we're trying to get out of this learning experience and focus on that. You can't do it all. You have to have a priority. You have to have a focus to each one of your practice, and you have to stick with it. Every time when we sit down for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, we need to be very clear about what we're doing today. Maybe 10 minutes today, I'm going to focus on this one vowel that I didn't know how to pronounce, and I'm going to learn how to pronounce it. I'm going to practice so many times within this 10 minutes until I know exactly how to say it. That's an active learning process. Conversely, a passive learning process is you sitting down, putting on your earphone and start doing whatever you were doing yesterday without really thinking about why you're doing it or whether or not you have been benefiting from this particular exercise. That's what I would call passive learning. And that usually is the biggest obstacle we have run into in our learning. And last but not least, we should not worry too much about how we are going to be in the next few weeks. Don't worry about next week. Don't worry about next month. What we need to do instead is make a plan, stick with it, and do the work. Worrying is not going to get you ahead. Doing the work and taking one step at a time will. But a lot of times we get so impatient, we get so frustrated, we want to see progress tomorrow. Honestly, it's understandable, but it's not helpful. We all know that progress doesn't happen overnight. We need to do all the work that we need to in order to experience, in order to achieve any kind of substantial improvement.